Bladetongue, told of the Fourth Age. And neither the lost gold of Cargiwal's heathen kings, nor yet the famed treasure of Xenops, was within those crypts wherein they wandered. For though they passed many chambers and broken vaults of stone, and no more trove nor jewel did they espy, yet some among the Bladetongues nursed grievous hurts from former battle, wounds being as tokens of the nether world. But even on they pressed warded into the darkness, nor fearing the unknown. Then it befell that Thalfin Miravel, mage of Nistol, received a shot of racking poison, a shock attack from a deadly spider. Out of the shadow sped the abominable monster with nimble precision, the size of a house cat, hairy and hideous to behold, and it pierced him with its fangs upon the thigh, injecting awful black liquid. And that foul creature skittered back into the gloom. Its eyes were as embers burning. Right away rushed in on them other of the brood, lesser in size, but not less fell of purpose, spinning from the high darkened ceiling, rushing across the walls and the floors in multitude, and fearlessly leaping upon the men. So were the company assailed of many nasty bites, and some were hurt grievously, for only daggers struck accurate to pry them from their limbs, and some cut themselves, for stern spiders held fast onto them and would not be bushed off. Even Phaethar, so well armoured with plate mail, was bit on the back of the neck. Nor was the flowing venom like any other, but sought their veins as with purpose. Norgonce, captain and leader of men, saw how bad was the arachnid nest which they had entered. Victims, perhaps previous raiding parties or goblin patrols, were strung up on the ceiling here and there, spun within wrapping and sucked dry of blood. And so he made the call for retreat from that shadowed hall. He bade them do so under shields, and that each have his weapon drawn and in readiness. And thus they withdrew step by step, their naked steel glimmering in the dim light, their breath quick and hearts sore shaken. "We have descended among the brood of the pit, where the sins of old had taken living shape," said Gulathar. And as they fell back from that dread place, they went softly and gave directions in hushed tones. The skittering of many legs would haunt their imagination for days to come. "There lurk yet within the tower more many-legged beasts of similar precision, I wager, spiders even larger," said Urius. Then Phaethar, who was keen in his schooling, made this observation: "By my faith, these creatures be not of common earth-bringing. Methinks they be the appointed ministers of wrath, sent forth of them ghostly kings, that we unsealed from their slumber. For such venomed vermin, of so unnatural a size, haunt only places accursed." To this answered Urius, saying, "Thy words have weight, for so was it heard in elder songs of my people, that the wicked kings of ancient time had power to command the creeping things of earth, and the minor beasts that dwell in the lowest. It is vengeance, I trow, in return for our trespass, upon their rest." Gulathar, who was most learned in the annals of forgotten ages, as he went along watching the dark, added his mind, "Truly ye speak, for in the record of Erython, which I have studied, it is told that the Ataluran princes had dominion over the spawn of the dark, yea, spiders and worms, and all that moveth in shadow. When the royal tombs are disturbed, the sightless realm remembereth them, and their servants doth awaken." Even as he spoke, Phaethar suddenly gave a groan and fell upon his knee, for the venom coursed through his young blood like fire, and when they lifted him, his limbs were cold, and his eyes rolled white. Then cried Norgonce, "Hold him fast and lay him down, for the poison hath near undone him." And lo, at that same moment, Pary also staggered, his face gone pale as wax, and was taken with fearful convulsions. Foam stood upon his lips, and his hands grasped at the air as one drowning. Great was the dread among them then, and even Urius turned pale, for they deemed death had chosen his prey. Then Thalfin, though sore wounded himself, spake an incantation softly, and drew from his scrip a draught of healing. Yet scarce had he given it to Pary's lips, and the halfling lay still, cold as marble. "He is gone," said Urius mournfully. But after a space, Pary shuddered and drew breath again, and his eyes opened. "Praise be," said Gulathar, crossing himself. "Yet march we no further this night. Here let us pause in empty area, for the powers that dwell in the tower's roots be angered, and only prayer shall avail us." So Norgonce gave command that torches be set, and the wounded be tended. To keep back spiders they raised a small fire of old funerary baskets within that round hall, though the air was dank and close. There they pulled over them blankets and stretched on their bedrolls without fear, setting first Urius as watch. Even so, in the third hour, from the shadowed corridors came the faint whisper of movement, unknown, as of things unseen returning to spy. And thus ended that night's travail. And with great haste endeavoured they to quit that area by finding one of the buttresses that connects the tower to the deep earth around. "We must breathe some better air for a time," said Urius, as that stirring in the chasm which drifts down from above and enters the shafts and caverns of that surround the tower on all sides. "The air is too oppressive here, even for a barbarian." So they endured long travail within the tower's twisting corridors, and then they found a buttress strong, which spanned the chasm, and connected unto a tunnel, and natural hollow a ways apart from the tower. And following it, they discovered a secret stream, cold and murmuring through the limestone. So they kindled a fire of driftwood, and set camp about the stalagmites, for the air within the tower's roots was foul, and the cool caverns surrounding the tower gave them some shelter from the creeping of spiders. The light of their torches shone upon the water, and the campfire was mirrored there as upon a blade. And when all were stretched out to rest, Pary, being sore wearied and yet restless of heart, fell into a strange dream. A great figure of burning gold appeared, with the body of a man and the face of a lion, whose mane shone like the sun through glass, and upon his head were 7 horns radiant. And the figure spake, saying, "Fear not, little one of dust. I am Ambrosius Amure, guardian of the pathfinders beneath the world. Thy steps are marked, and thou art chosen to bear the light of the living through the dark of the deep." The lion-headed one stretched forth his hand, and from it poured a stream of clear fire that entered Pary's breast, and he awoke with great trembling, yet full of joy and comfort of spirit. When dawn came pale through the cracks of stone, he told his fellows of the vision. "Surely," said he, "heaven hath marked me for some purpose, and the Lord of hidden ways has set his seal upon my heart. For I have seen the lion angel that guideth them that wander beneath earth, and I know now that our venture is blessed." Then Kajet, who sat binding the rent of his chausses, laughed a little, and said, "Yea, thou art sainted now, Pary, the dream blessed. Maybe the lion will roar for you when next we meet peril. For I would say that the spider taint filtered to thy head, and taught you to see more than the church." At this Pary glanced about at the others in disbelief. He gazed back to Kajet, wroth, and cried, "Mock not the works of heaven, nor the token sent to them of faith. You think your axe has glorified this fellowship, and therefore deem yourself strongest among us. But God chooses not by power nor height. You gave me no thanks for my swift work, without which thy head would be adorning the end of a hobgoblin's pike." Then Kajet glanced, his face expressionless, but underneath hot with anger. "Hold thy tongue, boaster. You stole my work. I needed not your help. Without my arm, thy company would never again see the sea, nor weapon, nor victual. Shall a wandering halfling preach down a hulking's due?" Pary leapt to his feet, and sauntered over to Kajet, and stood before him, smirking, feigning to be entertained. Kajet, who was sitting on a rock, watched him. Pary could easily have torn apart Kajet with his sharp tongue, but the slight on his size required another kind of answer. It might have ended there, but Kajet added, "Would not every man agree?" "Oh, that's right. You are half a man, halfling." Pary's hands clenched to fists. It were well that they had not yet strapped on their arms. He attempted to grapple huge Kajet, and almost succeeded to pull him to earth. Kajet, with his mighty arm, flung him away, but Pary rose up again from the sand and started reaching and slapping Kajet about the head. He was flung away again. Kajet might have stood up at that point to withdraw from the raging Pary, but he just laughed bitterly. Someone cried out, "Stop, Pary! He is one that you cannot win against!" Pary, now red in the face, glanced back to where his sheathed sword lay. "Seriously?" said Kajet. Now Urius came between them, and seized each by the shoulder, his voice like thunder in the cavern. "Peace, fools," he said. "Are ye brothers or are ye wolves? Have ye sworn fellowship only to draw blood one upon another? We stand yet in the shadow of our foes. Direct your quarrel against the fiends of the deep." Gulathar, holding aloft his lamp, came nigh and said, "By the wounds of all holy martyrs, this strife among comrades liketh not God. Let him that hath dreamed give thanks, and him that hath scoffed ask pardon, and so make peace before further sin be found." Then the ground beneath them shivered as with distant thunder, and a pebble fell from the roof into the stream. All turned silent, for from the little stream ran a faint laughter, like the lapping of water, hollow and unearthly, as though the place rejoiced at their folly. The omen did not get put aside as circumstance. Norgonce lifted his mace and spake solemnly, "Kneel, my sons, for this is warning enough. Let us pray ere worse befall." So they knelt there beside the water, their shadows long upon the wall, and the firelight trembled on their helms. When the prayer was ended, none spake further. Each man went off to look inward upon his own heart, and the cavern grew still, save for the whisper of the running stream. After an hour of melancholy to cool down, when the fire burned low and the flowing stream made gentle murmur, Norgonce rose from his place and called softly unto Pary, saying, "Come thou hither, son of Heleth, and bring with thee a humble heart." Then he beckoned to Phaethar, who straightway came to him. He placed his sacred hand upon the youth's shoulder and spoke. "I dare say, lordling Phaethar, your duty has come. As was before agreed, you are to sort out quarrel among the Bladetongue. Tell Urius to go fetch each, bringing them together in the middle to stand facing one another, looking at the other as a brother, warning them to be men and prepare for truth-saying, admitting fault. Then first ask for Pary's wineskin, and give it to Cajet, and bid him drink well the wine of your companion, and have Pary drink of the same. Take each and make them clasp each other's arms in peace. They will in turn speak the truth. If either resist, look upon them unabashed and deeply. Remind them of Christ and the answer they must give for it, and tell that everything is at stake. Do not fail in this, for the success or demise of our venture rests on it." So they came together to the center of the camp, and Phaethar stood between them, and they remained silent. "Ye have both done folly," he said, "and have grieved the spirit that guardeth fellowship. There is no shame in anger, for even the saints were men, but there is death in pride, which divideth the heart of comrades. Therefore make ye amends, and let this night's strife be buried, as sin is buried, deep, and with no mark left upon the soil. Pary, you now will pass your wineskin to Cajet." Pary paused for a moment, unsure. Then he passed the wineskin to Phaethar. Phaethar passed it to Cajet, who held it in his hands and looked upon it. "Drink down the wine of your companion, Cajet." Then Cajet looked upon Pary and said, "My words were said in haste and bitterness. You are my brother in arms. I wronged you. You fought well against the enemy, and we will fight side by side again. Hear my apology." And Pary took the wineskin from Cajet's hand and drank down. And he answered, "Although I, being puffed with my vision, was unthinking and proud, grant me pardon for taking such offense. I love thee more than I showed." Therewith Phaethar urged them both, saying, "Now grasp each other as battle brethren sworn, not as those who preserve courtly reputation for themselves, but earnestly in the sight of God." They embraced one another, and their hands were clasped hard and true. The fellowship took heart again, and Urius smiled a little, saying, "Now are we mended, and ready to confront whatever laughing dragon or fell spirit awaits." And trickled softly the stream beside them, as if a child laughing in delight. Afterward, they sat for a time in stillness, for the blaze of anger was quenched, and upon them all a gentler mood lay. From the clefts above there tricked down a faint moonlight, wan and white, whereby they saw their faces dimly in the water, as through smoked glass. Then Thalfin Miravil, who had spoken little since their strife, looked upon the waning flame, and said, "Lo now, how this fire burns low, yet gives still warmth and light. Even so, among men such is the last power that die. Keep ye it bright within your breasts, for neither spell nor steel avail aught without it. Gulathar answered him softly, "True words, mage, for I have seen comrades in the deeps that were strong as gods, yet they perished by bitterness. But the weakest that forgave, they endured. Brotherly love is a lantern that feareth no wind." Then Urius, smiling a little, cast a fresh brand upon the coals. "There," he said, "let it blaze till dawn. If any spirit of that cursed tower looketh in upon us, let it see that we yet have fire, and that we sleep not as cowards." So they made ready for more hours of rest, each man taking his watch by turn. The clink of mail and the sigh of weary breath were the only sounds. Pary, lying near the stream, gazed upward where the cracks in the stone showed the dim wheeling of stars. He thought upon his vision of the lion-headed Ambrosius Amure, and a strange peace filled his heart, mingled with awe. Then Norgonce, sitting apart with his hands upon his mace, prayed in silence for all their souls, that no malice nor enchantment might undo them ere dawn. And thus passed the wee hours in the cavern. When the first grey glimmer crept down through the rock, they rose and buckled their gear, and the sound of the river was as music calling them onward. So departed the fellowship of the Bladetongue from that place, and the echo of their footfalls went up the stair as they went on farther and re-entered the tower. How the Bladetongue found the worm in its aeon rest, and how by mishap it was awakened. So it befell, and finding another way descending by cataract, they came unto the lowest foundation of the tower, where the plinth stones were broader than houses, and the vault thereof so vast, that their lanterns were as mere candles in a hall of dark. There the river Sigurwash had changed in course through the ages, flooding half the chamber, till the floor was silted with grey sand, and the sound of running water rang softly. The place was heavy with an ancient quiet, and the walls were round as the stem of the world tree of song, roughened with moss and strange black slime. They went warily along the inner shore, their boots sinking in the wet drift, and lo, upon the wall above them, dim and monstrous in the half-light, they saw the bulk of something vast coiled many times about the tower's inward base. Its folds were the colour of ashes and iron. The surface moved faintly, as with a living breath. Then Pary whispered, "Is it stone or flesh?" And Gulathar, his eyes widening, said in dread voice softly, "Nay, friends, by all the seas beneath, I know it. 'Tis a vermilion worm, the worm that dieth not. It sleeps deeply in aeon rest. Yea, verily, I admit there is some risk that memory fails me, and this one be cousin. But should we not hunt down all their brood anyway?" At that they all drew back and looked upward, and indeed, surveying, they saw that the thing lay motionless, its coils filling the whole round of the vault, so that the tower itself seemed enwreathed by a serpent of the world's making. Kadjet said low, "Would that we had never come hither, for though my axe be keen, it would take me a long day's labour to hew but a single fold of that flesh. And if the thing be living, we should but waken our own death." Then Gulathar's face hardened, and he said, "'Tis living, aye, and better to die by the worm than to live remembering it. I have dreamt of its heart every night since escaping from its belly. Shall I not now easily avenge my brothers?" But Rohorst spoke his mind, steady and mild. "Vengeance blindeth men to reason. In my youth, 2 lions haunted our coast, and dragged away men and women from their huts by night. For a circling year, we hunted their kind, slaying all that had mane or claw. Yet the killers were but 2, and when we found them, their lair was full of human bones. We slew them, and the curse was ended. Other lions that dwelt happily upon the plain did we harm no further. But the damage was done. We had angered the Maker by killing off many worthy lions along with the fell. Many moons our witch doctors prayed to make up for it, and at last it rained again, only after great hardship. So thereby learn this: not all great beasts be looking to devour men, but only those that hath a demon. Your words, deep sieger, sound too uncertain whether this be the very same creature, or nay, rather its kin, some other beast of innocent years." Then said Urius, "So it was revealed, and we barbarian have always known. The Almighty made all things good in their beginning. Let us not strike at his handiwork without sure cause." And Norgonce added gravely, "The Lord's mercy hath bounds that we know not. Better to pass by the sleeping sin than to waken it. Let it lie, for judgment is not ours this day." At that Gulathar said no more, though grief was in his look, and so they turned from that place, stepping softly, and came unto a stair set within the great pillar that supported the tower's centre, and led upward. By this way they climbed, moving slow in spiral ascent, and through large windows in the pillar they saw from height the worm coiled vast below, gleaming like burnished mail in the dimness. Now in that climb there was a gallery ascending, where stood ancient statues of bronze and marble, Grecian gods on the outer wall rounded, each set beside a narrow window for the scant light to fall thereon. And the air there was strange, for some faint draught from the river stirred the dust, and the still figures seemed half aware in that shadow, as each man passed. "Touch not any," warned Norgonce. "Many fair things do hide peril, and are cursed by the old worship." Among them stood the elegant image of a goddess from days of idolatry forgotten, in original bronze cast of the most ingenious artistry, as to seem as real flesh, being so fair of face and form, but without modesty or gown. She was at a perilously outward tilt near the sill, as, though melancholy for her neglect and her fame now forfeit, jilted by the earth-shaking triumph of the new god. But Pary, whose heart was light again, gazed on her and laughed softly. Kajet remarked, "This goddess will no doubt bring us fortune with bonny lasses, if favoured of our help." So Pary stepped nigh to straighten her, and reached forth. Yet the stone beneath was worn with damp, and when his hand pressed upon it, the image slid from its base. They all leapt away as the goddess toppled backward from the ledge into the open hollow, and plummeted through the dim air, clanging down the sheer casings of the central pillar. "Thou hast not done wisely, Pary," said Norgonce, frowning, as the hollow bronze figure fell and struck stone repeatedly. It rang like an untuned bell, echoing off the stone buttresses, till she ended her performance in the dark far below, with one last clanging hollow upon the lowest stones. Then all stood still, hearts hammering. What seemed a long interval transpired, and there was nothing astir from it, all dreading lest the chthonic power had been woke by the noise. And then was some relief as the quiet resumed. But soon the ground beneath them trembled, and from below there came a deep whine, slow and eerily reverberating, as of a sickened giant waking from sleep. The waters splashed powerfully, and even the tower stones swayed in their setting. Gulathar whispered, "Ye have done it. The mighty one stirreth. Yourselves move not and make no sound. It hath no eyes, but it hath nostrils keen as hounds." So they stood like figures of stone themselves, while the sound of sniffing rose from below, and the air grew foul with heat and mist. The hideous nostrils of the thing came close, touching about the sills sniffing. Then Gulathar's face went strange, for the worm had turned its muzzle upward, and the air between them shivered with its breath. "It knoweth me," he said. "It remembereth the undigested one. And so do I know its heartbeat, which cannot be forgotten." And as they watched, the creature began to withdraw, sinking backward into the dark water. "See, it fears thee," said Urius. "Glad to be free of you. An awful blockage in its gut. The old wrong is ended. Let it go." But Gulathar shook his head. "Nay, fear be not repentance. I will have done with it forever." And before any could restrain him, the old Volrath threw off his rucksack and sprang to the window, shouting, "For the deep siegers!" and leapt outward into the gulf madly, bellowing like a marauder of old. His cry went diminishing through the vaults, and his axe gleamed in midair. The vast mouth opened in the gloom, and the Volrath disappeared into it, as a seagull disappears into a cyclone. And the huge worm took him in with a single gulp, and the sound of it was like the closing of iron gates. "God have mercy!" cried Phaethar. "He is lost!" All looked about, speechless, eyes wide like children, pondering as to what could be done, if anything. Then Norgonce. "Faith ye, there be one who plays with leviathans, as does a boy with earthworms." He climbed and stood firm upon the sill, and brandished aloft his sacred basher, declaring aloud, "By the word that made the waters, and by the fire that is never quenched, thou creature of perdition, demon-minded, vomit up thy prey, and aggrieve no more the righteous. In the name of the Lord Christ, cast forth the man of the deep, who serves us by sacred mandate, and is no breakfast for you. Thou hast swallowed him in foolish wrath, whom thou canst even digest." The worm writhed as though seared with flame, and from its maw burst a torrent of black water and mist. And lo, Gulathar was hurled forth upon the shores of the Sigawash. Then the worm groaned and slid again into the river's dark, making for the intermundane caverns, slithering from sight through a roundish portal in the tower's base, and the massive waves from its writhing smashed upon the plinth stones. They descended in haste, and found Gulathar still breathing, his armor scorched by acid, his eyes wild with visions. "I have returned again from the heart of the earth," he murmured, "and the handiwork of the Maker is deep therein." Then Norgonce laid hand upon his brow and said, "Peace, son of the deep. Thou hast done thy penance. Let vengeance die in thee, and the mercy of heaven live." So they rested there in trembling silence, while the worm's last ripples faded into the far caverns of the Sigurwash. And soon they looked to depart from that lair. So they took up their gear and went on, bearing Gulathar between them. None spake for a while, save when they passed the broken bronze statue, now tilted in the water, and Pary was whispering to Kadjet, "What a goddess was she! Truly an Aphrodite, and worth the trouble." Aye, she was, and there be no greater trouble than a goddess unguarded, save an ancient vermilion worm. As they neared the central axis pillar and interior stair again, Norgonce paused and stood, leaning on his cross, surveying the shore encircled with the array of plinth stones, the waters lapping up against the meandering shore. "No treasure would have been hid such a profound extremity," said he, "where subterraneous monsters freely pass through. Besides, the hollow world yields not much to gold seekers. What we have found is no gem nor ring, but a warning writ upon the throat of the earth. Let it suffice. The greedy are corrected. For where men covetous dig deep, God makes his leviathans haunt them as judgment. Of these we have wakened and yet lived. That is worth a song for the bards." He turned his eyes upon the steps winding upwards. "Come, the true hoard of Xenops was not down deep, but must be in the high places of the tower, where the wizard could comfortably count his coins. It is known Xenops also kept his books of power in the upper chambers, a greater treasure to him than mere coin. Let us seek those. Knowledge may yet serve the realm where gold cannot. But take heed and watch your step. This tower is no mere assemblage of stone, but a stair between the worlds. Each crumbling step we climb is perilous for our lives." The murmur of the river faded behind them as they began the climb, and none among them spoke further of the worm that dieth not. How they ascended toward the library of Xenops. So they climbed again by the winding stair, and the air grew cooler as they went up. Their lanterns cast long, wavering beams upon the walls, where strange runes were carved in Eldark speech, letters of fire now worn to shadow. Each step brought lighter breath, as though they mounted from death's dominion toward the realm of men once more. Far above, a draught of air sighed down the stair, bearing with it the scent of parchment and dust, and the faintest sound as of whispering pages turning in some unseen hand. Thus with careful hearts they went on, lanterns glimmering upon their helms and blades, until the stair broadened, and there was writ upon the lintel in 3 languages, "Near ye the library chambers of Xenops." Norgonce said, "Now is the night past, and our bones rested. Let every man take off his burdening pack and rest awhile, and his vow, for higher yet lieth our task." Their harness was dinted and their flesh sore, yet their hearts were quick within them for the wonders they had seen. Then Norgonce, that ever bare the mien of calm, leaned upon his staff, and gazed long into the shadowed arch, as one whose soul wrestles with hidden thought. And after a space he sighed and said softly, "Hark, all ye, I fear my memory be not as full told on to levelling, my lords. Now the bruises of my body have minded me on the frailty of men, how uncertain their course, and therefore will I speak plain ere some peril hitherto steal my breath. And then I go before the Lamb with a soul weighed down. Ye have followed me in faith, yet have been restrained with you in certain things. Then Thalfin Meravel, that wise man of Nistol's lore, answered, Nay, indeed, there be nothing level so much is as seems in this life, answered Thalfin. All here can vouch for that. But do your words carry something forth, Norgonce? Thou art burdened deeper than for treasure or renown. Speak then without fear, as we are brothers sworn. Therewith Norgonce lifted his eyes, which were full of sorrowful fire, and said, Not only by oath, but also by ordeal are ye brothers true, and it is meet ye know the truth entire. The wizard Xenops, whose tower we now profane, was not alone a master of forbidden craft. He was a chronicler of secret counsels, writing all that he beheld of princes and magi, both holy and accursed. Among these dealings was one most perilous, the compact of Prince Sinistox with the Lords of Shadow. It was he that accused me of treason before the Duchess, promising proof in due season. And this proof, I am persuaded, lieth within Xenop's records. He paused, and the fire of the lamp flickered across his face. But mark this, friends, there is another matter, a shame of mine. In my youthful school days, ere yet I was clerk and vowed to the Holy Rule, I wrote a certain treatise called The Book of Dominion and Grace. I meant it as a meditation on free will and the powers of heaven and earth, brashly asserting how unjust rulers immediately forfeit their authority, and without need of church tribunal to declare it so. In mine untamed reason, I also wrote too boldly of the nature of angels and men. Cleverly did I see to its untimely publication, hoping for recognition. Instead came disrepute. Some who read it whispered heresy, and I, fearing scandal through my errors, cast it aside and would not own it. Yet Sinistox found a copy of that same work and kept it, but not bothering to read it till recent days. Later Sinistox sent word indicating his discovery, and offering to return it were I to grant him free run of the realm. This I refused, sternly reminding him of his exile and unmerited position as Mark. So Sinistox retained it, and filled with glee upon realizing its value, he brought it here to be compiled among Xenop's darker records of every worldly prince and corrupt clergyman. So will he make me to seem a brother of their craft. He warned me not to hope for it, as the tome be guarded by some dread power beyond terrestrial ken. Thus hath mine own hand forged the chain that bindeth me. Then was there silence among the fellowship. Only the drip of water in the deep sounded. At the last, Norgonce continued. Last night, as we lay in the cavern by the stream, there appeared to me a vision of light, and a voice said, Thou shalt find thy guilt before thy proof, and in that finding shalt thou be absolved. This was not the first time I had the vision. Now I have the meaning. If that book of my folly still abideth here, I must take it and bear it forth, not to cover and conceal my wrong, but to confess, that all men may know truth from deceit. And with it, perchance, we shall also find the record of Sinistox's own conspiracy. Then shall justice be wrought for Yerbath, and for heaven's honor. Thalfin rose and bowed his head. Lord Cleric, said he, thou hast spoken as knightly as any that ever took the field. A man that can confess hath already conquered, and this even the philosophers admit. Lead on, and I will lend mine art to find this hidden library, though its doors be sealed with runes of the ages lost." Then Pary said quietly, "By my troth, I thought we followed a priest, but now I see we follow a man." Urius smiled a little, saying, "Both are needful in dark places." And Rohorst added further thought, "If this tome exists, and could indeed prove your innocence, it will also be fiercely protected. We must have deadly hands for whatever eldritch horrors guard it." The Bladetongue, now for these important stakes, resumed their dangerous trek, this time with a dual purpose: to uncover the treasures of Xenops and to locate the crucial text. So it befell that when the company had ascended to the tower's mid-part by winding stair, the stair went straight upward in coil like the perfection of a seashell. And they went softly up, no longer bearing Gulathar between them, for though he was sorely shaken by the worm's maw, he could now stand again. And his spirit was not broken, for oft he muttered prayers of thanksgiving between his gasps, as he was free of spite against his worm. The lamp in Thalfin's hand burned low, casting long, wavering beams across the stone. All about them, the walls were no longer damp, but were close, and the smell of things ancient hung heavy, as though the tower itself were breathing slow and mournful breaths. After long climbing, they came upon a level landing, broad and round, upheld by carven pillars of black marble. Strange symbols were cut upon the walls, which even Gulathar admitted he could read not, their lines filled with some dull metal that caught and threw back the lamplight like the gleam of faded gild. In the midst of this hall was set a door of ponderous craft, bound with bands of greenish bronze, and sealed with a sigil in the shape of a sun, half-eaten by shadow. Before that door there crouched a mighty form, neither statue nor living thing, but something between. It was wrought of alabaster and bronze, half woman and half lion. The claws graven so true, they seemed to grip the floor. Upon her head was a circlet of verdigrised gold, and in her eyes glowed a dull red fire, like embers that never die. Dust lay thin upon her back, yet had been stirred as by some late breath. Then they stood still in awe, for the air was charged as before a storm. Thalfin's lamp guttered in his hand, though no wind blew, and the faint shimmer of magic quivered about the guardian, as heat upon summer stones. "A sphinx of the distant ages," he whispered. "By my soul, Thalfin," murmured Pary, "she doth watch us." "Say rather, she doth wait for us," answered Norgonce, "for this is the threshold of the secret I foresaw in vision, the library of the old Magus, wherein lieth both my proof and my shame." No man could make cheerful talk, for the drear solemnity of that place oppressed them. The floor beneath their feet was of onyx, polished so smooth that their reflections moved ghost-like in the dark. From somewhere high above a wind moaned softly in slow measure. Then Norgonce drew a deep breath and said, "Be steadfast now, my brothers. We stand before the trial of knowledge, which hath undone many. See, a sphinx wrought so unto life that it seems to breathe, which is a mystery of art. Let us approach in humility, for wisdom guardeth her gates with a riddle." And with that they went forward apace, but silent as shadows, waiting to see if the guardian would stir. How the Bladetongue fared in the ancient library, and the riddle of the Sphinx of the tower. Then was there heard a noise as of a whining, long and deep, as the door yielded. Beyond was a hall, vast and circular, and its walls were set about with shelves of ancient books, whose pages fluttered faintly though no wind blew. The Sphinx was at rest, but then when they came up to her, her eyes suddenly looked at them, and they all were shocked, but were not afeard. No statue was she, neither statue nor living thing, but something between. And in those eyes was the sorrowful reflection of a wisdom overturned. Closer they drew near, fearing no longer spirit or any other being save the Lamb. And when they entered, her voice came, low at first, then swelling as echoes in a chambered hill. Who are ye that profane the house of memory? Long have I sat here amid the dead thoughts of men, keeping the lore of a fallen world. Once they called me Rhea, mother of wisdom, queen of the circling wheel. Now am I but the whisper of a question none remember to answer. Then was the fellowship more stunned, and even bold Cajet faltered in his tread. But Thalfin Miravel, whose heart was hot with wonder, made bold to answer her. We are friendly seekers, lady of riddles. We come not to steal, but to learn, for the truth thou guardest may yet heal a kingdom's wrong. At that she laughed, but it was a weary laughter, like the creak of a mill long ungreased. Truth, quoth she, truth is the millstone philosophers have turned until their souls were ground to meal. Yet, if ye will know it, answer me this. What is the thing that was born before gods, yet dieth with men? That buildeth towers, and forget why, that seeketh light, but blind itself with seeing. And at her words there fell silence, save the slow drip of water somewhere far below. Each man looked on the other, for none would speak amiss in that dread place. Then said Pary softly, Is it pride, lady? For pride was born before the fall, and dieth not till man is dust. But Rhea shook her mane. Nay, said she, pride is but the child of it, nor can ye try but twice more. Then Thalfin spake, his eyes kindled. It is reason, man's thought that would be as God's, measuring the immeasurable, dividing the whole to see its heart. And she regarded him long. Thou art near, she said, yet even reason hath a mother. Think higher. Then Norgonce, who had been silent, fell to his knees and said, It is will, O Rhea, man's will that would rule both heaven and hell, ungoverned by love or grace. For such was the will that did build this tower, and without such will, it is fallen to ruin. At this, the Sphinx lowered her head, and tears like molten brass dripped from her glimmering sapphire eyes. Thou hast spoken as one who knoweth the sorrow that come with the wisdom of old, said she. The will of man was my firstborn, and by it am I undone. Take then the knowledge ye seek, yet know it will burn ye if ye hold it without mercy. And therewith she trembled, and her form grew dim, and her wings folded upon her breast, as if weary beyond measure. The torches guttered, and a wind went through the hall, scattering pages like birds of ash. When the light returned, the Sphinx was still and was naught but marble, and in its paws was a single volume lying, bound in red leather and clasped with bronze long tarnished. It had tasted air from both altar and tomb. Then said Thalfin in awe, The Book of Proof, is it not? And Norgonce answered, I would so wager, and within are recorded damning passages of my work, taken out of context, from the Book of Dominion and Grace. But careful we must move this place. I will not hurry to seize it, as the old wizard may have put some magic snare on. How Norgonce identified his lost book, and how the fellowship made ready to depart the tower. Then, after they had taken rest a while, Norgonce rose and went softly unto the pedestal where the book lay. And when he laid hand there upon the red leather and brass clasps long tarnished, a trembling went through the air, and through his hand, as though the tower itself remembered. So taking it up, he opened the book with care. The pages fluttered as frail things, whispering faintly, for they were charged with strange virtue and peril. And within were many writings of wizard Xenops, secret and dark, touching upon the hidden causes of kingdoms, and the unholy craft by which climb ambitious men. And it became clear to Norgonce that the wizard had used the Book of Dominion and Grace unto his own plan of revolution for world politic. For he had quoted the heretical musings of the young and rash cleric many times, proposing that those zealous for power might even employ Scripture for their own purpose. Then, as he turned the leaves, Norgonce cried, "Alas! With my reading of Scripture did Xenops hope to undo the righteous of the realm. And behold here, a letter in the very hand of Prince Sinistox. See, his name, his seal unbroken. Here is writ his traffic with powers infernal, a pact written in his own blood, and the names of his fellows in treason. This is the proof of all his wickedness, penned 20 winters gone, and hidden ever since." Then Norgonce closed the book, and showed it before all, saying, "Thanks be to heaven, my friends. This is better treasure than a dragon's hoard. With this we shall lay open the false claims of Sinistox before the Grand Duchess, and right shall be restored. Our trials be not ended, but the way out of universal ruin is shown." At that word, the fellowship gathered round, and their hearts were stirred as by a trumpet, for they saw that their travail was not for gold nor glory, but for the salvation of a realm. Yet not all were of one accord, for not all men judge alike, even when something is obvious. Pary rose from where he had leaned against a pillar, and said aloud his misgivings, with less than happy smile, his cloak now torn, and his hand upon the pommel of his short dagger, for he never stood wholly at ease. "Profit be in noble deeds, and many will profit because we did them. Though ourselves take nothing profitable for ourselves, we have marched on behalf of many quarrels of the mighty. We were obedient pawns of endless marching, and even a few skirmishes we saw, and slew we but a few Bolgoth. But never did any hear of much martial glory. We worked hard as soldiers, and then as harder prisoners, returning home in shame. So already we have done much to save Ulthor. We have done soldiering, till our names are dust, and for thanks we get but scorn, on account of mere remarks risen from a drinking bout. Now we are sent forth again, exile masked as a glorious quest. I hold that if heaven desireth the saving of realms, it may pay somewhat of the cost in silver. This book may clear our priest's name, yet will it not fill our bellies, nor mend our fortunes. Therefore, by your leave, I rejoice in your proof, Lord Norgonce, and may the realm be healed of its corruption. Yet were it left to me, I would rather lug home a chest full of golden trinkets and silver coins, precious gems and magic charms, that my stomach might thank me for my courage. I doubt this here book feedeth any man's belly. What sayest thou, Phaethar? You laid down your ancestral gold in this venture. Dost not hope thou to take up somewhat more than honour in the end? Then Phaethar, that was ever gentle of speech and mild of countenance, turned toward him and said, Nay, friend, I would not buy heaven so dear as to sell my soul for the change. I gave my gold for the hope of good, not for its hire. I admit something of vain glory mixed with that hope, when I first spoke to all ye at the Golden Mermaid, but that now is quite repented of. For being so near death in combat puts one's priorities right. The realm's peace is worth more to me than 1,000 crowns, for what profit hath any man to heap treasure in a land undone by lies? If this book may clear one righteous name and save 10,000 lives, then is it richer than all the mines of Bardalith. And if we come home empty-handed, yet with truth revealed and justice met, we shall not be beggars. Then Pary looked long upon him, half in scorn and half in wonder, and said no more, for he found no words to counter such charity. So were they all greatly gladdened, and they took new heart to find their way forth from that perilous tower. And it was agreed among them that the keeping of the book should be given to Phaethar, who could well read it because of his schooling. And as a noble at court, he could more easily present it as valid proof, reading it aloud. And he was of faithful courage, and well beloved of all. So they would honour him with the task, and when he received it, he bowed low, saying only, Guard it as I do my own life. Then resumed they the long ascent within that tower, for their way went only farther upward. Steep were the stairs, and narrow, winding about the hollow core like a serpent of stone. Yet their new purpose and hope made the burden light. The darkness of the deep roots fell away beneath them, but the tower remained within, deeply shadowed, and their torches were, and lanterns were soon spent. Thalfin Miravel lifted his hand and uttered words arcane, and straightway there shone from his palm a pale blue fire, cold as moonlight upon snow. By that ghostly gleam they went, beholding upon the walls many runes and sigils whose meaning was lost, but whose power yet haunted the stone. It were as if the tower dreamed of its old dominion. "Go softly," said Thalfin, in a voice scarce louder than the wind, "for who can tell what snares Xenops set in the days of his waxing?" So they went along, suspicious of anything, their steps echoing long in the hollow places. At last the passage widened and brought them up to a vast rounded antechamber that encircled the very heart of the tower, and they came to a high door of beaten bronze, greened with age and half sunken in the wall, yet locked inextricably. Norgonce bade Thalfin open it by his craft, and this he did with ease. It was the central floor of library. More grand it was, thousands of tomes, and with books and scrolls on shelves reaching up far above, and some piled on large desks in various place, the thin coat of dust shrouding their colours. Some large tomes were bound in hide of strange beasts, others clasped with metal of brass or silver, and others knotted with cords that none dared loose. Immediately, upon opening a number of tomes and reading the titles, Thalfin gasped with pure amazement and began rifling through the stacks. "What is it, wizard?" said Urius. "We warriors do not spend our days reading books, yet we would know what's in them that excites you so." "Brothers, we have stumbled upon a major library of the ancients." Urius laughed low. "So we will take home books for our treasure. Is that it? I have slain giant serpents, with hordes more shining." But Thalfin turned upon him, eyes alight. "Thou knowest not what thou seest. This is no hobbyist den for a mere collector. But these stacks were put together over centuries. Here is learning drawn from all the kingdoms of the earth, the lore of Regulum, the combat manuals of Atalor, the philosophic treatises of Hermopolis, the poetries of Anshan. Understand that Xenops himself was once of Nistol, yea, trained under her arch-magi, before presumption made him rival his masters. When the Atalurans perceived how weak Regulum had become after the Romans left, they revolted against them, and the nations would have been enslaved. But the mages of Nistol cast them down with their powerful battle-casting. "Aye, I know well the story," said Urius. "Nistol, our people were indebted to her. For her service, she won the hegemony of nations. For tribute they required from us not gold, but knowledge. They gathered all writings of our realm, nay, of every realm, books sacred and profane, secular or magical, for safekeeping, a grand project. Yet for this our people soon would languish in ignorance ever after. So do people call us barbarians, but we never touched that realm with axe or sword. That was the work of others. Even so, we are also ignorant of wicked things, and I say we are the better. True it is, in their ambition for knowing they did forget the faith, your people, Urius, 'tis true, and this would someday require recompense. In those days Nistol became mistress of wisdom, and waxed in her beauty and greatness. Yet Xenops, jealous of her dominion, his former teachers, mirrored their work in secret. Thus did he steal the remnants of world's memory, and build his own tower to house it. Xenops with his one super tower to rival Nistol with her many towers. Think on it. These scrolls may outvalue empires. Nay, indeed, brother. To what end? Mere competition. Initially, aye, but soon was Xenops gathering all these writings unto himself to aid him in his own magical researches. This collection, though not as vast as Nistol, certainly is greater than the Bibliothèque Rumiliana in Regulum, or the Nautilus Library of Old Budderham, or the Library of Ancient Gandolon. Even Morpheus Memnos, the ancient philosopher and collector, would have been stunned by the sight of these archives. Now we know the real reason why we have found no gold treasure hoard in this tower as expected. The children's tale of Xenops, stealing away with unimagined loot into his tower, is not about gold, silver, gems, and jewelry, but really about the hoard of precious books and irreplaceable scrolls which he possessed, mysteriously. Here, brothers, here is the legendary trove we have been searching for. This is Xenops's treasure vault. Here is why he built this grand tower, to house his great library and protect it from the world, the wars and revolutions, the cataclysms and floods, even the bookworms and mice. But how move it out of here? We cannot stuff huge tomes in our sacks. Alas, we can but carry 3 or 4 books each at best. Even if we could, how difficult it would be to find buyers of books written long ago in different languages, on topic of which most men have scant familiarity. Then Urius crawled laid hand to brow, and said beneath his breath, "Here is something that liveth still, my patience with myself, with old Xenops. It is clear that Thalfin is right in this. Alas, our take will not be a famous one. We fought valiant to win a few dusty old books that most will never read. Nay, we will not be sung by the bards. Although, take heart, this quest be recorded in some forgotten chronicle somewhere, if that excites you, brothers. So there goes our hoped-for retirement and elevation. We will just make do with it. So this is the treasure. By your knowledge on these matters, Thalfin, how many gold crisettes could be had for the best tomes here? What would you average for most these? But a few silver pieces would most men pay for the best, Urius, which before our own time of ignorance were worth thousands of crises. Of the arcane treatises here, grimoires, potion recipe books and vibrational charts, magical scrolls and catalogues, and all arcane manuals comprising the majority of the collection, and numbering in the thousands, not anything. Most folk, to be relieved of them, you would have to pay. It's not because they are accursed, but because most folk suppose them to be so. Nor even if you could find someone who appreciates them like me, he would not want to be burdened with them, for the magical writings are defunct and inoperable, useless even to wizards. They might be of interest to a historian of the arcane, but good luck finding such a man. No, indeed, these works, beautiful and amazing though they are, all have become quite useless artifacts of mere curiosity. How so did that transpire, Master Thalfin? If these scrolls and grimoires could activate great magical power before, how did they end up defunct and so useless that not even a wizard will bother with them? Thalfin answered not, so consumed was he with his ravenous perusal of so many rare and glorious works, both arcane and secular. The draw of his words was greater than the patience of those endeavoring to learn his history. So the others wandered idly among the stacks, while Thalfin muttered to himself the famous names of the rare works he found. The lost Zilmurian epic, Neckar of Isauria, Histories, Olophyxus Astronomia Prophetica, Amoth Parhasius's Catabasid, the Nzulg Zodiologion, the Book of Nod, Zakara's Onierokritikon, Scardetes, the Magian Dichotomies, the Goat Meditations of Petolius, Excalded Book of Negilius, Engine and Furnace, Poems of Sod Bloodman, the Vale of Ashkahon, just name a few of the famous ones, non-magical. Pary seated himself on a toppled lectern and whittled a bit of wood with his knife. Cajet yawned hugely and peered up into the gloom. Urius examined the old ladder of rope and iron that mounted toward a gallery. "All this lore," he said, "and none of it feedeth a man." Thalfin paid him no heed, but went zealously from desk to desk, blowing dust from bindings, peering at sigils, muttering names. An hour passed, and another, till even Gulathar grew restless. "He seeketh a ghost among bones," he murmured. Then at last the wizard cried aloud, his voice ringing strange in the still air. "Found, found, by the veiled stars, the book long lost, sought by countless scholars for over a century, and 'twas hid here the whole time, the lost Sefer Hypostatica of Nus Elkomenon, the founder's own hand, long sought and never seen since the fall of Nistol." The company rose and hastened to him. He stood over a black-covered volume, clasped with copper and bound in lizard skin, his fingers trembling. "Behold," said he, "here lieth the rite that shall heal the hypostatic rift itself." "Heal the what?" "The hypo... what?" asked Urius, scratching his boar-like mane. "Hypostatic rift, that sunderance of the universe's deep substance, which hath weakened severely all magic since the age of our fathers. There occurred a failure in the balance unseen energies, Urius, a collapse of the metaphysic. It happened at the turn of the age. Wizardry was sorely crippled, and for years discovered no way on how they might mend the planar schism. Only evil sorcery remained unhindered, black and sinister, anathema, which none would dare resort to for its summoning of demons. No worthy magic was able to be cast. So bad was the problem that Nistol waned and was finally overthrown. All her libraries burned to the ground in a single day and night, and the smoke of her conflagration blackened all the sky. Those who trained me in the feeble tricks I know, they were the long-living survivors, and they, too, are now vanished from the earth. And I am the last of the Nistoli. Therefore nothing can be done about it, said Pary. From what I understand, Nistol's golden age was yet a tarnished one, for not all thought well of her dominion, and she is not spoken of with smiles in my homeland, Childashire. Your folk in their simplicity knew not her well enough. What great works did the many-towered Collegium accomplish to protect the freedom such little country towns as halflings enjoy? Nistol's magic and knowledge brought medicine, better agriculture, many fine sciences and technologies, and learning to the Empire. Its loss was the greatest tragedy of our era. She was the light of the world. The kingdoms have never recovered, and still wallow in the ignorance of ignorance, knowing not even which of knowable subjects men should endeavor to know. And this is darkness, brothers. Then said Norgonce, Yet it is a new time, Thalfin, and a new light has appeared, and lights the world. For when it shone, the earth shook, because the darkness cannot comprehend it. Thalfin looked at Norgonce askance, and at first did not answer his argument, and after a silence said, Nay, Norgonce, far too bright hath that light you speak of shone upon all. Verily it hath awoken dragons, dragons of such might the world had never imagined, which not even the high elves of old could slay. But take heart, for shall such devilish beasts be soon under our dominion, if these words of magical power, writ in this Eldark volume, be spoke aloud. With the right disposition, an arcane mind will receive the metaphysic vortex and duly project the intonation, and the rift in the psychical fabric of the world soul will be mended, the flux restored, old harmony will return. The rivers of power will flow once more. The beast will be silenced, and evil dominion shall wither. Troll armies crushed, the new aeon shall dawn. I tell you. Norgonce frowned and spake gravely. Many were the angels who fell through Lucifer's hollow promises of a golden age. That old power of magic is not enough, Thalfin, for it is written, Who can compare to the beast? Who can stand against him? Only God can. Beware, son of Nistol. Thalfin turned, his face lit with zeal. So you do not accept my hope? Would you accept my wisdom? Will you have me bury the Sefer Hypostatica, this treasure again in dust, Norgonce? God himself set man above ignorance. This is the key lost since Babel's ruin. I shall read it, and the breach between spirit and matter shall be made whole. Art thou saying that thou shalt say a powerful and dangerous spell writ within that Eldark book, Thalfin? Mean you this? So I do mean it, and I will, even now. Urius laid a hand on his arm. Friend, leave such mending to the Maker. The world standeth by his will, not thine. But the mage shook him off. No, my brothers, this one work shall redeem Nistel and all our kind. Stand clear, for I will speak the runes of healing. Then did Norgonce cry, Hold thy hand, Thalfin, thou knowest not what thou summonest. The voice in my dream warned me. Thou shalt find thine own guilt ere the proof be thine. Meddle not with what is above thee. Recall that even the old gods punished such rash acts. Yet Thalfin would not hear, but strode apart, setting the tome upon a stone lectern, where once Xenops had read. Rohorst said to him, Wizard, wait, this seems too soon to me. The stakes are high indeed, if this spell be as powerful as you say, and indeed as high must be the skill required of the caster. If the spell miscarry, it may undo thee, or even pluck thee away from us, and we can ill afford to loose you. Even our witch doctors study their art many days before they attempt their charms. Why not abide a little, and ponder the runes till you have certitude? Pray, wait some days and study the text more, ensuring precision in your work. But Thalfin answered, with eyes shining, as one who seeth far beyond the mortal wall. Nay, my friend of the savannas, the world hath waited too long for its healing. Too long, by far. Our dangers thicken with every hour, and I may well lose my life in the next fray. Then there would remain none to speak this spell, for I am the last living who was taught the high arts of Nistel. Either I cast it now and renew the world, or the chance shall perish forever. I must do what's right. Therefore take heart, and pray rather for my success than my restraint. He opened the clasps, and a wind went through the library, as though the books themselves sighed. The dust rose like smoke, and the candles flickered blue. He began to chant the words of Elkomenon, syllables long dead to mortal ears, an extremely powerful Dwemer. The air quivered, the 100 shelves trembled, a sound like the sea in fury filling the vault. Light blossomed around him, white, then violet, then burning gold, till none could look upon it. Thalfin, desist! Shouted Norgonce, but the wizard lifted his arms, crying aloud, Behold, the veil is rent! And in that instant came a thunderous sound, as if the tower's heart broke. Seen no more, only a column of radiance whirling upward, and then silence. His staff clattered to the floor, smoking at the tip. In his manipulation of raw power, he overlooked a seemingly minor detail, a yod of Mercurius, some minor tonal errors, something which only a master would detect. After realizing what he had done, tapping into powers not to be leaked into the material plane on account of their cosmic instability, he tried to correct it, but it was too late. The last image seen of him was holding his staff under his arm, while simultaneously fumbling through the pages perplexed. The swirl increased and time ran out. A storm of intermundane fire, inward collapsing, shaped round him, and he was gone. He never gained the necessary control of the arcane nexus. The dimensional horizon of radiant matter wrapped his body like a python, sucking him up and away horrifically with blinding flashes into an unidentified plasma vortex. He was now absolutely irretrievable to normal men. From this mundane terrestrial life forever was he thus rent. He uttered no cry of fear. The Bladetongue stood aghast. Pary was first to kneel, whispering, "He has gone into some strange vastness." Then Norgonce bowed his head and said, "Pray for his soul, for he died not in malice. Nay, but endeavoring to heal the wound of civilization with mortal hands. God grant him mercy." Urius closed the burned staff with his palm and murmured, "The flame is spent. It was quick. He did not suffer but brief pain, yet the choice was permanent, something he did not expect." Phaethar wept, for unfamiliar to him was the sudden death of a beloved comrade, but Pary consoled him. "You are blessed, young man, that you still have eyes that weep. The world has not so hardened you. Thalfin is worthy of such a farewell." Part 4. And so they mourned Thalfin beneath the towering collection of 1,000 books, where his voice still seemed to echo faintly in their minds, like a leaf caught between pages turning of themselves. At last Norgonce rose and spake. "Let none touch that tome again. We have found not treasure. Now we ascend. The work does not heal the world, but bears a witness unto it." And so the fellowship heaved on their packs, and made ready to climb toward the tower's upper reaches, leaving all worthless tomes of precious knowledge behind. From that library of marvels departed they, and were full heavy within them. The air yet glimmered faintly where the wizard had stood, and an odour like burned flesh hung there afterward. Slowly they ascended the winding stair, each man bearing what had been seen as burden. No sound was heard for a great while, save that of their feet upon the stone steps. Soon they came to a landing where an aperture gave view upon the dark hollow. So they rested. The moon hung low beyond the clouds, casting a pale beam through a window of the outer wall. There, Phaethar leaned upon the rail and said softly, "He was dear to us all. Many a night he taught me of the stars, and now one with them is he. But alas, he would mend the world before he mended himself. What an fate unforeseen." Urius, who sat upon the step below, answered, "Yea, strength obey, as much as it command. He sought to wrest from heaven what had not given. God loved him still, for fate struck swiftly, and all was done without complaint. May he not be gravely punished." Then Norgonce spake, his voice deep and sorrowful. "Not fate took him, man, but his destiny, missed and misused. There is not a chain that bindeth man to a certain end, but the door set open before him. Had Thalfin waited, had he bowed to grace, another blazing would have crowned him. So do perish all who reach for the keys of creation unfearfully." And when he had said this, all were silent again. None could answer. The sound of the river Sigurwash far below came faint through the stones, as of the world's slow mourning. At last Rohorst rose and laid a hand upon Norgonce's shoulder. "Still," he said, his passing hath meaning, for even broken stars give light to the traveller. Mayhap his demise will warn wiser men than we." Then Norgonce gave blessing over the place where they stood, tracing the sign of the cross upon the direction of air whence the wizard vanished. "Rest thee, Thalfin Miraville," he said, "for thou didst vainly love arcane knowledge more than life, and human welfare more than divine law, and with that must go before the truth himself." And they went on upward, the stair spiraling into the dark above, their lamp flickering low. Yet ever as they climbed, their thoughts lingered on Thalfin's staff, now to rest there forever in the grand library, the tower's heart. It was not long thereafter that they found the study chamber of Xenops in that topmost chamber of the tower. Without knocking, they entered in and saw what they deemed an old bald wizard sitting at a desk, snoozing. Many huge arcane tomes were open, as for one researching, some covered with spider webs. Pary Lothran, unafraid even of a sorcerer, approached the one there sitting alone, asleep at the desk, yet with some scroll unrolled before him. "Rouse thee, old man. See you now, men of iron will, intruders without apology. Make no mistake, they require your cooperation through threat of cold steel." The elderly lord stirred, and his eyes opened wide. Alarm there was in them at first, but when no blow fell, he steadied himself. Slowly he sat upright. Pary spoke sternly. "Your eyes do not deceive you, wizard. Think not some magic will humble us. Magic is greatly extinct anyway. Its rivers choked, its springs dried up." The old man looked up, surprised at Pary's knowledge. He stroked his shaggy white beard. "That is well known, foolish robber," he snapped, with a raspy voice, tired of having shouted many commands. "Ye need not teach me. Nistal hath burned in the fire of judgment. Even so, it would be well that you marauders depart this tower at once, lest I grow weary of tolerating your interference with things beyond your ken. Be not fooled by my elder look, for if you try your blades against me in hopes to seize some loot, you will perish withal by the power of my casting. Think not every scroll spell lost. Keen minds can still tap into the dimensional vortices. I have at my fingertips arcane knowledge greater by far than you can comprehend, as I was trained at Nistal." Pary answered him well, that magic does not much prevail against men any more, Xenops, as I am sure you are aware. For it is a new time, wherein the spirits of men are like elk in rutting season, wounded yet undefeated. Your power is in repute alone, so tell us all that you know, especially of any gold which we suspect must somewhere be hid around. We may need to raise an army against Prince Sinistox, your own conspirator, if he escapes the court's justice. Or if you say that you know not of the famous treasure, explain your ignorance. Attempt not delay, nor beg for lenience. Speak, or be constrained, nor offer any lie, as you are in the presence of God-fearing men who will detect it." So did Pary Lothran address him without reserve, and in grave and measured voice the man gave answer. "Sinistox, now there is a name that shakes me. Pray, keep him away from me if you can. So then, I must forfeit my game, and lay all before you. I do admit this. You have not found Xenops, the wizard in his famous tower. I am not he, even though his repute I would use to shield me from marauders who occasionally burst in. No, I am no magic user, but chamberlain to Xenops, awaiting the return of the wizard, my lord." Years I served him, through loyalty, but inwardly asking, to whom is Sinistox loyal? For of old I was an outlaw knight and loyal compatriot of that prince my lord. Sir Balgalad was I once titled, and was with him upon the field on that day of hope, when we sallied forth and made war against the king of Ulthor. But hope gave way to despair, for our glorious ranks were overturned, our banners trampled, and we were taken in shameful defeat. Outside the king's pavilion, we begged for our lives like curs. Therefore let me tell you of that great rebellion, and what was said not long after the war left our array in terror, our host shattered, and our souls adrift. For it was then that Sinistox first accepted his baleful name, and I myself was complicit in the birthing of monstrous treachery. I must tell it before I leave this terrestrial existence and go before God to be judged. Will you hear it? Tell all and leave nothing unsaid, said Norgonce, and it shall be counted as penance partly done for rebellion and misdeeds. Then began Balgalad to speak in a low and measured voice, as one recounting things long regretted. 9 days on 30, we rode our wounded horses through the hollow forest, west and north, through this realm, and the same half-dead and doleful wood which bordereth the merry meadows of sea-girt Ulthor. We and our blood-soaked crew, 600 knights, by defeat we knew dishonor and disgrace profound, and the bright banners of our arrogance were trailed in mire. Dread of the king's unleashed power, and the thought of his shining host of righteous knights drove us into our exile. We did not stop riding until we reached our new refuge, a place of woe in the borderlands, long prepared beforehand by the king, our new conqueror. For in his kingly mercy, strange mercy to such as we, he had aforetime ordained that every man released of bonds or crime might take refuge there, and undertake some labor lawful. So came we to our dwelling in that waste, and knew not yet that exile is the heaviest chain a man may wear. It was one of Vulcan's old strongholds, a fiery cone upon a furnace hill, girt about with a moat of molten stone, that is, of burning rock, a veritable crown of torment set upon the brow of earth. To that place we bore the fallen Prince Sinistox in a litter, still wearing his dragon armor darkly gleaming. This place was for him a shelter and new home, the abandoned temple of some unknown demigod. The punishing shafts of the king had deadened our leader's limbs. There lay he now vanquished and spirit blasted, with not even dreams to comfort him. Rebellion against Ulthor's king had reserved for him even greater remorse, for the thought both of lost happiness and lasting exile tormented him greatly. When after countless hours he finally rose from his painful bed, he was only able to sit in the ancient sacerdotal chair of the temple sanctuary. There we sat many months in that dark hall, brooding with our robber knights, heads sunk in defeat. And on that broken throne at last he took notice of his vassals, and round about he cast baleful glances and spotted us, his somber accomplices. He would often look up with cold eyes upon his dismal temple, of which he seemed the new deity. a place wasted and barren. It was a veritable natural fortress of many cavernous chambers and vents interconnected, through the center of which uprose a great throat subterraneous, which sometimes did shoot water as a geyser, and other times overflow and spill within as a waterfall. It was a terrific and savage place, a many-chambered castle rock for monsters and cave savages, encompassed by flowing magma pools on all sides. That molten river serves well as a moat of destruction, a boil whose sulphurous fumes dispel every noble thought. Here peace and rest never are found, nor any songful birds or beasts of forest tarry in the vast wood of leafless trees round about that fiery moat. Even our serfs fear for their lives and do not approach. How unlike the good and bright kingdom Ulthor from which we were driven. We who were once counted among good knights sat there in the midst of the temple pillars with our master, our reason overwhelmed by the gloom of the situation. At the last the Banelord lifted his sunken head and beheld me, his companion in ruin, equal in crime, the one second to him in power, soon to become the grand knight of our worm-lord order, Balgalad, as I then began to call myself. To me, therefore, Sinistox, puzzled, broke that horrid silence, a silence that had held each tongue in check since his defeat. Thus he began. If thou indeed be that same man whom I once knew, but how could that be? How strange you are now to me, how changed your expression, though all else seems the same. Wast thou that same knight I once knew so highly promoted in the happy halls of the High King, clothed in the transcendent armor that outshone the thousands in polished mail? It is indeed you, the one to whom I was joined by mutual league, ambition, agreement in thought and design, and risk in the glorious undertaking. Now again am I joined to you in the misery of these chambers, to dwell together in polite wreckage. So he spake, and I nodded in answer, and then more thought he revealed to me. Who among us can forget how proved the king, with Hermias's bright bow and those arrows spirited? Until that day no one had ever known the force of those dire shafts. Still, I refuse to be swayed in mind by any thought of true change, regardless of whatever else the king can inflict upon me. Behold my face, deformed in outward luster by the unnatural fire which engulfed me when those flashing darts, hurled at highest velocity, down upon me came. Now I appear not unlike some grimacing troll born below. What could I say? It was not helpful to comfort him by denying what was evident to all. I cast down my gaze, but he continued. So why should I change the sentiments of my mind? The high disdain which grew from the seed of unlawful injury and took root in my heart, a growth which the king's favoritism nurtured. A mind of unmoved resolution raised me to contend against the mightiest king the earth has ever known. A mind of wisdom and agreement with innumerable other knights who also durst dislike his reign. Those followed us and met his utmost power in dubious battle on the plains of Whitehawk. So indeed, we shook his dread throne. But what is left for us now that the field is lost? None of the knights could answer, for they were loyal and would not say that there was nothing left. So after a silence he answered himself, "All is not lost. My unconquerable will remains, the desire of revenge, immortal oaths of hate, courage never to submit or yield. What? Would the victor have me further bow and beg for mercy on cowardly knees, and exalt his power, the same king whom so recently we caused to fret, lest his vast domain be forfeit? Now that would be a shame, were I to do that. Indeed, that would be ignominy, and beneath this downfall, since by my own royal bloodline, I have vigor to live far more years than common men. Look upon my armor worked by enchanted forge. By unknowable glyphs it cannot be removed, even if I am captured. So this event has merely advanced us in both experience and foresight. It has taught us how to wage so tremendous a war, but whether to use force or guile against Ulthor's triumphant power, this question my thoughts turn upon. So spake my rebel lord, though in pain, vaunting but with deep vexation. To him I, his bold accomplice, answered, "Chief of many knights, prince who led the embattled heroes to war, a man under whose conduct we endangered Ulthor's beloved king, putting to the test his supremacy. Much do I regret those dire events which brought defeat and lost us our worthy fiefdoms, the day which caused horrible destruction to the assembled host. Here now we sit swallowed up in misery. But consider that he, our conqueror, has allowed us to keep these dark and dusty lands of Ardaheim, the territory where bounded to the south lay the old kingdom Cargiwall, which was Ulthor's fief. Any ambitious prince and his alien army, allowing considerate losses, may pass through the hollow forest to ravage Ulthor's borders. Number as hostile to him also the spirits dwelling within this fiery mountain, where somewhere men say lurks that spirit of inhuman evil, a hydra of old, one who makes our crimes seem but a child's selfishness. Consider too how the king has been merciful to us rebels, we who deserve death, but instead with lenience of a father commanded us go into exile here. He has even kept us attached in his service, though in this hard labor and endless penance, namely, that we oversee the obverse passage from the troll-infested mountains of Zabol, the accursed kingdom of Nzulg, and daily patrol across this waste, and 'neath the great northern wall. Remember, my worthy liege lord, that we are bound to obey him, though our resentment repudiates obedience. Even so, it is the price we contracted for our very lives." So I reminded him of our remnant honor. For such moves even the basest of criminals. But the accursed lord of the fiery hills then gave speedy admonishment. "Grand knight of military ruin, let weakness be our excuse. No man can say when the ghost king of Zabol might awake from slumber to send forth a Horgoth horde through all the Firthlands, though we every day patrol and fulfill our contract. We have forfeit many knights and horses on the narrow trails, in the treachery of the hills, or the swamps of gaseous death. Nor could we ever lower ourselves to ally with those mindless goblin breeds, if even they do find some way past the Great Wall. Come they, be it by ladder or tunnel, yet they know nothing of alliance or purpose, but would lay to desolation anyone in their path. Yet know this, to lay benefit of service for our king's defense will never be our task, though we fain be his vassals, but always to cause some ill or show ourselves contrary to his will. Our labor must be to pervert his every design, and see to it that his reign seems an evil. So let us now consult how we may henceforth most offend him, our merciful enemy. Look about, bold knights. Is this the abode you must endure until your last day? Is this the region, the soil, and the climate of permanent fiefdom for which you have longed since first knighted? Does this state befit your honor? Are these the seats we will accept in exchange for the palace of Whitehawk, this hateful gloom instead those wondrous halls? So be it, since the sovereign now holds unmatched power to dispose of us and keep us at his bidding. It is best that we are removed so far as possible in these outlands. Farewell, beautiful groves of Ultharung. Hail, putrid swamp. Hail, Hothic waste and fiery lake. Hail, scorching fire pits below. Receive your new masters. Here at least we are in some measure free. Here we may rule secure. For ruling supreme in hateful exile is better than slavishly being ruled in our once beloved kingdom. That is how determined he did become, bent on hell against the king of Ulthor, his own father. And now I, Balgalad, must sleep in order to forget such pain. So by report of Sir Balgalad, were the very intentions of Sinistoc's Bannerlord, the sole master of a princedom adjacent to the shores of Ulthor. His eyes peered away into distant memories, and he shut them as one in great pain. After pause, it seemed he would pass into forgetful sleep again, but Pary forbade it. Thou hast not said all, Balgalad. If we are to accept this and have proof that you not be the famous wizard who narrates some clever tale of diversion, but rather an old knight, then you must tell all of why thou art no longer loyal to Sinistoc's, but now serve the wizard of this tower. So Balgalad added to his speech. For some years afterward, I rode with the prince and the dirge knights, for I was his closest counselor. We performed our duty of patrolling the desolate waste, until the day that he dared put us in greatest jeopardy. Alliance he made for us with pure evil, entering into league with the dragon spirit of the fiery mountain. This too much violated the king's mercy law, which utter defeat had once taught us to accept. His new madness was more profound than any man should desire, to sign in blood a constitution of league with a spirit so sinister, so inhuman. What we had was gravely agreed upon, even without wine, that we could no longer obey the prince. So under cover of night, I and many others, no match for him in combat, abandoned our posts and left him there in his grim volcano palace. So seeking some new refuge we came here, to the city Ironport, and we worked as guards for Xenops, an outcast like ourselves. He hired us to go under the earth into the intermundane caverns and locate the many-handed Anthri, that they might build this colossal tower. So did the strange creatures build it with our oversight, giving hope to someday begin our own rulership. Yet our darkness, though somehow rational, would not long escape the madness of evil. In digging our tower, we found a deep area, a place which allowed us to enter the underearth without the perilous water usual to that level of depth, and we hoped to begin trade with that underrealm and expand our influence. Many years I prospered, and my associates and I had the labyrinthine tower reinforced into the walls of the great caves. It is a mountainous round tower, with its roots deep upon the shores of the undersea. Such tall towers are meant to catch the flowing breezes of the upper atmosphere, and send them by means of shafts downwards into its corridors below ground, its vast spreading roots which can hide armies. So did we design it. The gods betrayed us when we gained too much glory. One day we discovered that our engineers were not returning to the surface as usual, but many had disappeared, for our construction was intruding into an area owned by the Zamzumenin, the most evil of all sorcerers who dwell below. They indeed were enraged when they saw our works, and paid an army of infernal monks to pray to demons against us. But the demons at this era of time were terrified, and so hidden, not answering the prayers of evil doers, for this occurred during the period which all call the expulsion of the Old Ones, that is, the astral powers, the demon gods, and had been driven out from all the temples of men to hide away in Tartarus, the great prison, doing so not under constraint, for so terrified were they of the Most High that they gladly stayed there and would not come out. However, where no blood sacrifices are poured, they cannot long stay. The Zamzumenin eventually purchased the loyalty of Prince Sinistox, who had been making a name for himself throughout the Intermundian caverns by his conquests, both in the upper world and below, and they eventually called upon him. He put the subterraneous waterways in siege upon us with his dreadful navy of worm lords. Though we did escape with our lives, the great tower of Xenops we have secured, and all evil glory is ended. The wizard has gone off to seek out magical relics and spell components found at the ends of the earth. I must await his return. The winding corridors of this tower I haunt, an old man, soon to be off to the next world, waiting to pay the devil's wage. So spoke Balgalad, and the controversy of Sinistox troubled the mind of Norgonce. The accusation which the baleful prince had lodged against him in the presence of the Grand Duchess, how he had plotted against the king and worked evil in the land. The good cleric put away these thoughts, and instructed Balgalad to repent and worship God. And leave thou this accursed tower, Balgalad, for wicked spirits dwell herein, which only those who use power from on high can oppose. Your lord Xenops, the wizard, I do prophesy, will not return, for time has run out for him, and he is lost. Therefore heed my word, or else deny and spend your remaining years in darkness, sitting at this desk, bereft of divine favor, and succumbing to the horrors of this place for all eternity. So did all depart, and would say prayers for wretched Balgalad that evening, for the old knight instructed them how to find their way out of the labyrinthine corridors of that tower easily, achieving their way back to the entrance and bridge.